Hi guys, welcome back to Sweet and Sour Soccer, and of course we are here to react to the breaking news that has come out in the last about the last hour actually regarding Nottingham Forest and Everton. Of course there has been huge rumbles of this news in the last couple of days, but it has now been confirmed that both Everton and Nottingham Forest have breached FFP regulations, and of course that could have big implications for both clubs. Guys, in this video I'm going to give just a slight bit of detail around that, and just go into a little bit of detail regarding what that could mean in regards to points deductions. But mainly I wanted to make this video a little bit more not just talking about the news, but giving my opinion on whether I think it is fair. Now, if this is the first time coming across the channel, just for clarification, I am not a Nottingham Forest fan. I'm not an Everton fan. I am a fan of another Premier League team, that Premier League team being Wolves, who were actually facing some potential FFP implications before we sold a lot of our key stars. So I've kind of got a little bit of a vested interest in this, and of course I've got a strong opinion on FFP as a whole, through which I will be giving throughout the video. Where do we start off? Of course, by talking about the implications that it might have. And now the early rumblings, and it's always hard to know whether it's just journalists trying to get their potential views coming in, etc., etc. But of course, some of the implications that breaching FFP might have, as we've already seen this season, is that potentially points deductions can happen, and that can be as many as 12 points. Looking back earlier in the season, Everton were hit with a huge 10-point deduction, and it has been rumoured that they could be facing further points deductions. In regards to Nottingham Forest, it was actually also early rumoured that Nottingham Forest were prepared for this. They've already prepared themselves with a good lawyer to fight the case, but have almost also come resigned, I heard in other news, to facing a 5 points deduction. Now, of course, under new manager Nuno Espirito Santo, that would still mean that they're probably not in a position, if I'm being honest, where I think they would go down. But of course, it would put them back in that relegation fight and very close to the mark. Now, that news around the possible 5 points deduction did kind of get took over by the fact that they are preparing to fight this case. And one of Nottingham Forest's main points is, of course, the sale that they made in August around the sale of Brennan Johnson to Tottenham, in which was a huge fee. Everton, on the other hand, as we know, let's be honest, it's a club that hasn't been ran perfectly great under Mashuri. They've signed some big players. Those big players haven't worked out, and Everton's failed to rise up the table with those players and maybe sell some of those players off for a big fee, has ultimately resulted in them not only failing FFP once, but failing it a second time. And I think it brings a really big moral conversation here, because I think you have to look at both situations in detail. Now, the first thing people will say is, let's be honest, they broke the rules. The rules are in place. They broke them. Therefore, fair enough. Job done. Points deductions fair because the rules are in place. But you have to dive into why those rules are in place and why, and whether those rules are fair as well. And of course, I always find it hard to justify these rules when you've got the same board that are dealing with these kind of things in regards to Premier League FFP are also the same people doing the fit and proper tests on owners. And we're seeing situations like we saw with Bury, and then now seeing with Wigan Athletic, where these dodgy owners managed to somehow take over a club, then pretty much put them out of business. It's looking like Wigan are really suffering as a club and could go out of business. From what I've been reading, they're stripping the full assets of the club, and these are the same people that are in charge of these FFP situations and these the basically everything that's happening with FFP. So for one, that's one thing that I wanted to bring up, which kind of just puts the reputation of the whole of the FA organisation and the people that deal with this fit and proper test to, not very high regard. You've also got the question of this. I want to firstly touch on Nottingham Forest situation. Their current owner, he took over in a situation where the previous owner wasn't a really good owner. It was a bit of a, I wouldn't use a bad term, but he wasn't a good owner, let's be honest. And they've come in with a new ambitious owner, an owner that's willing to spend and has ultimately got them into the Premier League. Now, you look at their Premier League situation, they went up with a good team, but a lot of those players were on loan. They lost a whole lot of players. So what did they have to do? They had to go and spend a lot of money. They had to get players in. Now, so the counteract to failing FFP for them would have probably been to not sign players. And then you get a Premier League like what we've just seen in this coming season, a team where Sheffield United, their owner, doesn't really want to spend. Luton obviously trying to live within the means. And Burnley, they've spent a lot, but it hasn't really worked out. So the counteract to what Nottingham Forest, in theory, according to financial fair play, should have done has gone, oh, we went up with, we went up through the playoffs. We've lost a lot of our players because there were loan players that got us up. But, we'll just let it be. We won't spend much to keep in line with FFP, and we'll just, face the fact that we're not going to have a team to challenge. That doesn't feel right for me. And this is where circumstances, I think, in some regards, has to come into it. I think, when these charges get brought upon a team, there has to be a reasoning. Well, why did you spend that? What were the implications if you didn't spend that? And where have you proof that, this isn't going to affect the running of the club? Because that's what FFP is supposed to, in theory, even though people have different opinions. It's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to make sure that a club doesn't go into financial trouble if the owner gets a bit bored. Now, I'd argue a lot of what Nottingham Forest have signed are good assets that they'll probably make a pretty good return on them. They've obviously also sold a homegrown talent in Brennan Johnson. And, just thinking of the kind of players that they've took a gamble on and also brought in, quite a few of those, if you look at their the value that you would get from them now, they would actually make a lot more than what they brought for them, or at least what they made for them. So for me, this isn't a club, even if their owner, which I don't think he would, decided to walk off one day, would find themselves in financial trouble and unable to compete. You then look at Everton. Now, Everton rightfully haven't spent in the last couple of years to try and keep in line with FFP. The problem they've got apparently is that their wages are so high that they cover, I've seen reports of almost 90% of the income that they're able to make. Now, what have they done to try and mitigate that? Well, firstly, they've brought in further outside investors within the last 3 years. They've also tried to expand their ground and, of course, the commercial opportunities that will come from that, not just from being able to bring new fans in, but I imagine it will have a much better commercial setup, which means they'll be able to make more from advertising, etc., etc. So they've at least tried to do something to mitigate it. So let's take Everton's situation. Again, what are Everton supposed to do in this situation? They've found themselves in a situation now where, okay, maybe they shouldn't have spent the money, but they have spent it. They've been deducted 10 points. Maybe people would agree or disagree with that, but they've not really been given that much time to react. Now, I get that the accounts are concerning the previous 3 seasons, but my argument remains, again, similar to what I said with Nottingham Forest. So what should have Everton have done? Got rid of Pickford, maybe got rid of Onana. I'm trying to think of other players that they potentially could have sold on for a big price. They're probably the only 2. So you get rid of them, and then you end up with a team that can't compete once again and can't strive for anything and probably is going to get relegated anyway. And this is why I hate FFP, because it relieves this real kind of issue where, people are really struggling either way. The clubs, I should say, are struggling either way. I don't know, to be honest, guys, a big thumbs up just popped up on my screen. I don't know if it's come up with yours. I don't know if it's a little editing tool that's come up on this video. But anyway, that's what threw me off. But yeah, I think it's a really difficult one because on the other hand, as I said, I'm a Wolves fan. So I wanted to give a little counter argument to that, which people might want to hear, is the fact that Wolves have gone by the book. We sold a lot of our players. We lost a lot of our good players. And we haven't been able to spend money, even though our owners would like to spend money and our owners would like to see us progress. Now, the problem there is you then have that kind of mitigating factors of, can you not punish Forest and Everton because technically they have broke the rules, whether they've done it on fair basis or not, when clubs like Wolves have tried to stay within the lines. And this is where I just think FFP is a complete mess and it really just needs redesigning, because I don't think it benefits anyone but the big boys, because the big boys have so much more potential commercial revenue that they can bring in from overseas, etc., etc. All FFP is doing, it's keeping the big boys as the big boys, and those that are trying to get higher, it gives them a real difficulty. Now, you might have an occasional one that break through, such as Aston Villa. Newcastle did it last year as well. And of course, Brighton have been run really well as a club. But it's easier said than done. Owners are going to make mistakes, just like they're making businesses. And I just think it's a real mess, in all honesty, FFP. But it remains to be seen. Will Nottingham Forest be deducted points? Will Everton being deducted points? And as a result, will one of them not end up a Premier League club next season? And let me tell you this, if that ends up a fact and one of these teams don't end up a Premier League club because of FFP regulations, that will put them in a lot more mess than their owners spending money ever would. I would just like to make that point there. But guys, let me know your thoughts on this. Is it fair? Is it not? What do you make of FFP as a whole? And if you have enjoyed the video, guys, please do hit that like button. Please do subscribe to the channel, and hopefully I'll catch you on another one. Take care. Goodbye.